I'm sick of? I'm sick and tired of regressives hindering progression. I'm tired of people with regressive, antiquated mindsets hindering progression, hindering the progression of humanity, hindering the progression of society. And I also hate the fact that we as a society pander and appeal. I also hate the fact that we as a society pander and appeal to those who don't want to see society progress. You know, I think that, at this point, we know what things work and what things don't work. I think, at this point, if you're not on the side of science, if you don't advocate science and you're against science, then you're just holding us back. What you're saying is irrational. What you're saying, it's useless. It's nonsense. Because the scientific method is the single most reliable path to discovering reality, to discovering the universe. And I think the scientific method is the most useful discovery in human history. I think we as a species have had enough scientific suppression. I think we'd had enough of, suppressing and regressing our technology and our knowledge for the sake of appealing to superstition. Have you ever heard of the Dark Ages? 1,000 years of scientific suppression. Who knows what we'd be doing right now if it wasn't for people getting so offended because their superstition doesn't equate with reality. If everyone had the apparatus and the tools of logic, reasoning, rationality, skepticism, critical thinking, then we as a society would be in a better place overall. Because the thing about it is, we don't appeal to logic. We don't use logic. We appeal to things that are irrational. And, instead of doing what's best for everyone, we often do what's best for only a small few. I hate this notion of, oh, don't play God, you're playing God. That has to be the most stupid concept I've ever heard of. Playing God. So basically you're saying, when you say that, basically you're making a big argument from ignorance. Because what you're saying when you say don't play God, you're attributing God to an ever-receding pocket of human ignorance. So whenever we have a scientific breakthrough that creates and discovers information that we previously didn't know of, you attribute that to something that God did, to something that God can do. That's funny to me, because if you're saying don't play God, inferring that we are showcasing attributes of your God, then wouldn't that just make us God? If we can do the things that you're saying that God can do, then there's no need for a God. Humanity never fails to amaze me. Humanity never ceases to amaze me. Here you have people discrediting science, even though science is the foundation of everything that we have. Literally everything that we do, everything that we have, whether you want to admit it or not, all this technology is because of science, the scientific method. But here you have people, trying to, undercut science and, badmouth science, trash talk science, as if it's not literally the foundation of how we're running this whole entire thing. You know, I don't care if you want to pray about whatever. I don't care. I don't care if you want to, think that the world is 6,000 years old or 10,000 years old, or that humans and dinosaurs live together, or any other this nonsense. But the second that you try to get these ridiculous beliefs legislated so that they can be taught in schools, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with you trying to make the government and enforce these ridiculous, unsubstantiated, asinine beliefs onto everyone else just to appeal to your emotion or your uncomfortability with reality. We as a society, we appeal to capitalism, bureaucracy, tradition, culture, religion, emotion, the status quo. These are things that are hindering us. Instead of looking, formulating this plan, looking at it objectively and saying, what is the best way to live a life? What is the most efficient and, practical, logical way that we can progress as a species? Instead of doing that, we appeal to things. Basically, what we do is we shoehorn these antiquated concepts into society for the sake of, just irrationality. There's these distractions that people don't even know that they're being distracted by. One of them is race. Race is a social construct. I don't buy into the concept. Race. The idea that just because my skin tone is a certain, just because I have a certain skin tone, but then again, it's not even that. Just because you assume that I belong and I am subjugated or I subscribe to this specific culture, that I have to act a certain way, that I get treated differently than someone that you think is from a different culture. And so that's stupid. That's stupid. Another distraction is class, socioeconomic class, class warfare. The idea that, people of different classes, like a person from a, quote unquote, higher class in the hierarchy, looks at someone on the lower class as inferior, and that they use the people on the lower class as a scapegoat for all the problems that's wrong with society. That's a distraction. That's actually, it's pretty intriguing, at the fact that, the people that are actually in charge of enforcing the rules and, just making all of this stuff run, and that actually carry out what they want to happen, their agenda, they don't actually get blamed for the things that is wrong with society. But the people that are victims to these circumstances, they are the ones that get blamed. That is actually genius. All of this shifting the blame, oh, it's because of the blacks, oh, it's because of the whites, oh, it's because of the Mexicans, oh, it's because of the Chinese, the Jews. the Arabs. You know, this is just a big distraction, and it's total nonsense because, I mean, think about it. If you convince the lowest white man, if you convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you emptying his pockets. Hell, if you put anybody that he can look down on, he'll empty his pockets for you. That's what's happening. That is a perfect description of the type of society that we have. We have a bunch of people looking down through their ivory towers. You know, we have a bunch of people on a sinking ship, and the people at the upper deck of the ship, they're like, you know, I don't care. Look at the ship. Look at the ship sinking. All those people at the lower deck, at the deck, man, they're gonna drown, man. But you know, that's none of my problem. It's not my problem, man. It's none of my business. That's the type of society we have. Instead of all of us, you know, thinking and moving as a cohesive unit, collectively, as humanity, as a species, you know, and thriving. You know, we're just, I don't know, man. You know, if you're an American, the fact that the majority of your tax money is going to bombing people overseas, the fact that no one cares about that, but the thing that I see most people complaining about is that a very small portion of that money from taxes that they're already taking forcibly from you, a very small portion of that money is going to helping your fellow humans not starve to death. That's what I see people complaining about. I see quote unquote middle class people making fun of and shaming poor people, saying, you know, things like, oh, look at you, you poor bum. I'm paying for that food. I'm paying for your food with my hard-earned tax dollars. Yeah, I pay for where you live. I pay for your food. Taking all the jobs. Scum. Go back to your own country. Go back to your own country. Leave the country. That I hear things like that. Welfare queen. You know, that's appalling to me. You know, anytime, you know, these things, these problems are presented, you know, when someone mentions, you know, how about we stop, you know, spending so much money on a defense budget to impose a military-industrial complex on other places and bombing people and things of that nature. How about we take some of that money and effort and put it into, I don't know, not letting people starve in the streets? But they're like, how are we gonna pay for that? How are we gonna pay for that? I don't know, man. The same money we're using to bomb people and launch nukes. I don't know, man. When will the proletariat realize? When will the proletariat realize that the bourgeoisie never cared about them? When will they realize that their hard work doesn't make them a productive member of society? It makes them a slave to some psychopath. When will the proletarian realize that the people that you're trying to appeal to don't have your best interest? the elite, the capitalistic elite, don't care about you? When will you realize that these corporations and these industries that you're supporting and trying to keep afloat, when they're obsolete? When will you realize that these industries are shoehorned into society to line the pockets of these rich psychopaths? When will they realize that? When will they realize that they don't care about how hard you work? When will they realize that securing your job is not their priority? When will you realize that the only reason they haven't, at the time of this video, they haven't completely eradicated the human laborer from the equation is completely economic? And you know the funny part about it is, every time there's a clear sign that the ruling class doesn't care about you, and that the fact that there's no such thing as a middle class, it's just rich and poor, every time that's a clear indication of that, these people, they will defend the people that are exploiting them. They will defend them. Instead of, that when jobs are outsourced by people overseas and people in different countries, they'll blame the people, the impoverished people, rather than the rich corporation owner that intentionally chose the laborer who he can pay less money to so he can meet his bottom line, because he doesn't care about your well-being. I don't understand that. The reason why socialism never took off in America is because the citizens don't see themselves as exploited proletariat, but as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. That is true. That's true. They want to, these people, they'll fight against their own kind. They'll fight against people who are in the same boat as them. But the people who are exploiting them and manipulating them and exploiting them, they'll defend them exploiting them. I don't understand. When will they realize that capitalism is unsustainable? When will they realize that capitalism is fundamentally made to fail? It's fundamentally made to collapse in on itself. Capitalism, I think they'll realize when capitalism will meet its demise due to its own creation, automation, technology. When technology and automation becomes cheap enough to where it's used in mass quantities and replacing human laborers, causing rampant poverty and mass unemployment. I think at that point they'll have to realize, But then again, it wouldn't surprise me at the extreme lengths they'll go to just define this reach of a rationalization to why the system just doesn't work. Capitalism by design is made to where the bourgeoisie, the ruling class, the elite class, the owners of the production, people that own the means of production, try to meet their bottom line, try to raise their profits as much as possible and their costs as low as possible. And that means replacing human laborers with machines. And there's going to become a point where machines and automation will produce products but the citizens will be so poor that they can't afford the products being produced. I think at that point they'll have to realize that the system it's done, it's obsolete, it's unsustainable, it's reached its capacity, it's overstayed its welcome. It's overstayed. It's time to just throw it away, create an entire new system. Because at that point, that is where these concepts that we find crucial, and we look at these concepts as the foundation of the economy, of society, of culture. We'll have to reinvent these things. These concepts, such as money, such as job, such as meritocracy, such as equality, equity, social safety nets. These things, we'll have to totally revamp these things and reinvent how we perceive these concepts and how we will implement concepts like this, or omit and get rid of some of these concepts. If not all of these concepts. There's going to come a point where there's no longer there's no longer the ability to just put a patch over it, to just patch it up, the inherent flaws in the system. This is the logical conclusion of what capitalism is. In capitalism, to have winners, there must be losers. That is how it's structurally designed. And in capitalism, it's actually not about the well-being of the people living in society, of the citizens. It's not about the well-being of the citizens. It's not because of the benevolence of the baker, the brewer, or the butcher that we expect our dinner, but it is from their regard of their own best interest. Capitalism, it shoehorns in this false sense of competitiveness that some people equate with humans' natural tendencies. A lot of these things that we're forced to do in capitalism, this is not because of a natural tendency of humans. These things are shoehorned in, and they force us to act in ways that are counterproductive to our advancement and progression. When will they realize that the only reason why these places, these corporations that provide food, that sell food and necessities, they don't do it because they care about your well-being. They're doing it because there's money in it. If there was more money in something else, then they would just do that. And so this notion that capitalism is what brought humans to this, great civilization and great place to where we have such necessities and luxuries, that's false. As if capitalism is inherently human nature. That's false. Because in capitalism, you can have everybody, you have everybody going to try to do basically the same thing, whether it's productive or not. Whether you say it's productive or not doesn't mean that it actually is. So they're doing these things that create money, or they're doing these things in hopes of making money, when it's actually just destroying the world around us. And yeah, like I said, it's unsustainable. Since capitalism cares nothing about the well-being of the environment, or the well-being of humanity, what's going to happen when the last molecule of air is polluted, or when the last molecule of water is tainted? What are you going to do? Eat the money?